revelations have emerged that 7 key staff members resigned in a huff from Archetypes, citing unpaid wages as their cause of contention. Meghan, who officially launched the said podcast last summer on Spotify, dove into, among others, the exploration of the societal labels and stereotypes holding women back through some of the biggest female stars, including Serena Williams, Mariah Carey, and Mindy Kaling, on the stereotypes and misconceptions negatively affecting females. At the time of its launch, Project Archetypes was heralded as a flagship effort for Meghan, who had known from her previous service to the British royal family. Spotify signed the Sussexes and Archetypes to a podcast deal said to be worth millions of dollars, with many more shows planned. Nonetheless, contrary to the outwardly successful image, internal operations reportedly faced turmoil. 7 key members of Archewell Productions, including a top executive, senior producers, and those who were to research topics and book guests, have all left this summer, according to the Errors. Sources told the report that in their view, the deal-breakers were lack of remuneration, impossible working hours, and expectations. Key grievances of the staff identified an aspect of the failure to receive deserved payment for their efforts. In fact, the employees point out that there are no compensations to pay them even after having invested the spending hours for several months. The employees themselves point out this claim, saying that Meghan and her PR team really wanted to call them unpaid volunteers, or interns, who had to work 60 to 70-hour work weeks without receiving overtime pay. The nature of the job was described as overwhelming and highly demanding, with last-minute changes to the filming and production schedule very often throwing personal lives out of gear with a lot of notice. It's one of those ventures which need to encompass long hours from very senior staff. But, definitely, there needs to be some concern with no clearly defined compensation structures and chaotic working conditions to be producing podcasts of such high profiles as Archetypes. This, therefore, puts into perspective that Meghan, as the Duchess of Sussex, would have had a big exposure to finances through the royals and the juicy deal that she would have signed with Spotify. Failure to compensate key employees who had spent months at work leading up to the launch of her passion project looks bad for Meghan from a public relations perspective. They added that Meghan and her representatives ensured that every staff member knows it was an entirely voluntary and unpaid job role. Some, however, opined that no communication was effectively made clear regarding an expectation to work without the standard industry compensation and working conditions. However, this fact does not seem to be brought out too clearly, and both parties do not seem to be very transparent on their side of things. The collective resignation of 7 committed, experienced professionals, all citing similar grievances, surely points at some plausible shortcomings in the management and operational approach behind Archetypes. These staff exits also came amid reports of a wider organizational shakeup at Archewell Productions, the content company established by Meghan and Harry. Some sources also provide that this couple is now rethinking their creative vision and is assessing whether they have to downsize their first moves in the podcast and television domain. These changes seem extremely likely to influence the future of Archetypes and all that comes thereafter, following seasons and new productions. This seems a very key moment in the trajectory of the project and its eventual success. If midway, the core production team is lost, that surely would mean an end to all this progress and would affect the project's momentum in a bad way. On top of that, unfair allegations by former workers may again play spoilsport with the credibility and interest quotient of the podcast. This is an opportunity that marked Meghan's first major solo venture outside of royal work, as the unique opportunity presented by Archewell Foundation and MBF allowed her to lend her independent voice to thought leadership and contributions to the public at a critical time in history. This is highly prejudicial, with the possibility of a risk to damage of that vision from poor management and substandard professional standards. The question arising now is whether Spotify, given the exclusive association with Meghan and the large sums being apparently thrown at Archewell Audio, allowing their first point of contact to be an unresearched interview, will see it as such. But the issues following this allegation in relation to reputation might affect how the future contractual decisions will be made. That said, Meghan's so-called divisive public image means that some of the criticism levied at her can sound really unfair. But if there are all the resources in the world, concerns for not meeting the most basic professional standards of the workplace are valid, and that just cannot be brushed away. These allegations come as Meghan and Harry openly commit themselves to issues such as fair pay and leading the advocacy of mental health, things that had brought them in close contrast with their image. With this level of figures and sums of money, the level of expectation on how they take care of their projects and employees is higher, in terms of care and professionalism. The impacts are not only felt on their current ventures or projects but are felt on a much bigger brand, theirs and the causes associated with it. This further reinstates the need for integrity and ethically managed work ethics in all professional undertakings.